What if the phone that rang from the dead never really stopped ringing? What if escaping a killer didn't end the nightmare, but instead passed it on to someone else? And what if the voices you thought were gone were only waiting for the next person to answer? This is the Black Phone 2. After the terrifying events of the basement, Finn Blake is no longer the same boy who survived the grabber. Survival did not free him. It marked him. Even though the grabber is gone, Finn begins experiencing something deeply wrong. Phones ring in empty rooms. Disconnected lines emit static at night. And sometimes, in complete silence, he hears breathing on the other end. His sister Gwen, once known for her dreams, is now plagued by visions that are even more violent than before. But these are not ordinary dreams anymore. They are stronger, more structured, almost like memories trying to return through the wrong mind. She sees children again. Not just the victims from before, but new ones. Different faces. Different locations. Different screams. It becomes clear something is still active. Something connected to the grabber, but not dependent on him. Finn tries to live a normal life, but trauma does not stay buried. It evolves. He avoids basements. He avoids phones. He avoids silence more than anything. Because silence is when the voices return the clearest. Then, the first new disappearance happens. A boy goes missing under circumstances eerily similar to the grabber's old pattern. No witnesses. No evidence. Only a ringing phone left in an abandoned location. Finn refuses to believe what this implies. Because it should be over. The killer is dead. But Gwen's visions confirm something worse. She sees the grabber again. Not physically. Not alive. But present. As an echo. A consciousness lingering beyond death. And it is no longer confined to one body. It is spreading. The Black Phone is no longer just a device in a basement. It is becoming a medium. A bridge between worlds. A system that does not require a single killer anymore. Finn and Gwen begin investigating the pattern behind the new disappearances. What they discover is disturbing. Every victim is connected by proximity to locations tied to previous crimes. As if the past itself is bleeding forward. The phone calls return more frequently. But now they are different. Instead of warnings, they are invitations. Voices of past victims begin speaking directly to Finn. Not just helping him anymore, but asking for release. They are trapped in something incomplete. Something unfinished. And they believe Finn is the key to closing it. Meanwhile, Gwen's visions intensify to the point where she is no longer certain when she is dreaming and when she is awake. She sees the basement again. But it is not the same basement. It is larger. Extended. Connected to multiple rooms that never existed before. As if memory itself is reconstructing reality. Finn realizes a terrifying truth. The Black Phone was never just an object used by the grabber. It was a conduit. A mechanism that allowed victims to speak after death. But now that the connection has been activated, it cannot be shut down. Because death does not close communication. It amplifies it. The line between past and present begins collapsing. Finn starts receiving calls from numbers he recognizes. His own phone. His house. Even disconnected devices that should not function. Each call reveals fragments of future violence. But knowing does not prevent it. It only makes it worse. Because the system adapts. The new force behind the killings is not acting like the grabber anymore. It is improvising. Learning from fear. Understanding patterns of escape. Using psychological pressure instead of physical traps. And it becomes clear. This is no longer one man's legacy. It is a structure built from trauma itself. Gwen eventually discovers the most dangerous vision yet. She sees Finn dying. Not in one way, but in multiple possible outcomes. All connected to different decisions he might make. The implication is horrifying. The system is testing probabilities. Like it is trying to find the version of events where fear produces the most suffering. Finn becomes the central variable. The one constant across all outcomes. The black phone begins ringing directly for him more frequently. And this time, the grabber's voice returns. Not as a man. Not as a ghost. But as something embedded in the system itself. A residual intelligence formed from violence, memory, and fear. It speaks in fragments. Not to threaten. But to guide. Because it wants completion. Not survival. Finn learns that the only way to stop the cycle is not to escape it, but to sever its connection entirely. Which means confronting the source again. Not physically, but psychologically. The final act forces Finn and Gwen into a mental confrontation with the entire history of the black phone. Every victim. Every call. Every moment of survival and failure collapses into one space of memory. The system tries to break them by overwhelming them with voices. Screams layered over screams. Warnings that contradict each other. Memories that do not belong to them. But Finn does something different this time. He stops running from the phone. He answers it willingly. Not as a victim, but as a witness. This changes everything. Because the system depends on fear-based interaction. And acceptance breaks the loop. Gwen focuses her visions into one final thread of clarity. She identifies where the connection is strongest. Not a physical location, but a moment in time. The first moment the black phone was ever answered. Together, they force a symbolic closure of that moment. Not by erasing it, but by acknowledging every life that passed through it. Every voice that remained unheard. And every death that was never fully witnessed. The connection fractures. The system destabilizes. The voices begin fading. But not all of them are gone. Because trauma does not disappear completely. It only loses structure. In the aftermath, Finn and Gwen survive again. But they are changed. The phone still exists. Somewhere. In some form. Because systems like this do not die easily. They scatter. And wait. The final implication is chilling. The black phone was never about one killer. It was about the permanence of unresolved fear. And as long as fear exists, the line will always be open. Somewhere. Somehow. It will ring again. If you enjoyed this recap, subscribe to Movie Story Recaps for more intense cinematic breakdowns. Comment which movie you want next. Because in this universe, some calls are never meant to be ignored.